In the kingdom of Nri, there lived a young and handsome prince. He was the first of his father's two sons and next heir to the throne. He had seen how well his father ruled the kingdom and the perks of being a king. He often daydreamed about becoming a king someday and ruling the kingdom for a very long time. He couldn't wait to assume the throne and become a renowned king. He wished to exceed his father's reign, as he knew his father would be leaving the throne soon. The king was dying of old age. He had ruled for over 30 years after his older brother. The prince, right from birth, was taught the traditions of the land in preparation for his father's eventual passing. Decades later, he was about to put his training to use. Although the prince was a strong and disciplined man, but he feared he might fail in his duties, and feared he might not live long, like his 87-year-old father. He wanted to be immortal. After much research, he sought the help of a less popular but powerful dibia, one who would keep his secret and carry out his desires. He sent some of his trusted servants fix a day to visit the dibia, and embarked on his quest to keep his reign forever. The dibia, after much divination, told the prince that the gods would grant his request if he brought certain items to appease the gods. The items included cows, goats, cowrie shells, snakeskin, and a leopard hide. The prince promised to provide the items if the dibia is successful in ensuring his demands are met. The dibia, after more divination, told the prince it was impossible to grant him immortality, but he could extend his life longer than his father's at a price. "What's the price?" the prince asked, dissatisfied with the offer. The dibia sighed, choosing his words carefully. "Your life will be tied to that of your newborn son Chioma. The longer he lives, the longer you live. You must guard and protect him from harm. He must not have a child of his own, otherwise the potency of your link to him will be broken." The prince was visibly shaken. He wanted grandkids from his son when he grew older to become a man, but after a deep thought, he shrugged. "I have another son." "Do it." The dibia, having seen the prince's desperation, reminded him once done, it couldn't be undone. The prince urged him to do it quick, before he changed his mind. The prince left the dibia deep in thought, but happy he had gained longevity, although a far cry from what he initially wanted, but better than dying before attaining his father's age. When the prince arrived home, he called his wife and cautioned her to ensure their son was protected by all means. "My life depends on him," the prince said to his wife, who smiled warmly, happy her husband loved and doted on their son, but unaware he meant it literally. With time, his wife began to notice similarities in her husband and her son's well-being. Whenever Chima was sick, the king became sick. When the baby got well, the king returned to his normal health. The prince's wife wondered at this unique bond her husband and her child shared. One day, the king, after a long illness, succumbed and passed away. The entire village mourned for a month. Immediately, the prince was crowned the new king, and he assumed his duties right away. The villagers revered him and brought him fresh produce every day. Kings from the other villages paid homages. He became a popular king and was known for his wisdom and kindness. Many years later, the prince's wife, also known as the new queen, realized she was aging, but her husband wasn't. The servants in the palace and the villagers began to whisper about his unchanging youthfulness. Chima grew into a young, handsome man full of energy, but he was never allowed out of the palace walls without an aide. Initially, Chima took it as his parents, protecting him from harm. He was homeschooled, but whenever he got the chance to look beyond the four walls of the palace, he was always with an escort in a car. He never got the chance to make friends and began to get depressed and sad. His mood swings began to affect the king's performances. People began to call him the moody and angry king. Knowing the reason for the mood swings, He called his son to have a chat with him. Chima, full of anger, blurted out his frustration. I am 18 years old, yet I am caged like an animal. If you don't ease my imprisonment, I will take my life. The king groaned in anger. You dare not touch a hair on your body, he said, and then softened his tone. I can't bear to lose you. What would you like me to do for you? Chima sighed. I want to be free. I want to be like the other teenagers out there. But you're not like the other teenagers. You are a prince who must be protected, the king said. This isn't protection. This isn't living either. The king, having seen the sadness in his son's eyes, caved in. You can go outside the palace walls, but you must go with your younger brother. Chima's eyes light up with a smile. He gazed at his father. Thank you, father. I promise you won't regret it. The king's heart warmed up as soon as Chima's smile lit up. You must be very careful when you go out there, and remember you are the next heir to the throne. Don't fail me. Chima promised and left his father, happy with his newfound freedom. Chima, once free from the tight clutches of his parents, began to go out, but returned before his curfew. He was obedient to his parents' demands, but started carving his path from the palace duties. He wanted to be an adventurer, not a king. He wanted to be free as a bird and explore the world around him. After years of being caged by his parents, he didn't want to be tied to the throne and the kingdom until his old age. His new friends taught him things he couldn't possibly learn from his parents. Soon, he began bribing his brother to keep off his back while he went out of the set boundary. He met a girl, fell in love with her, and became extremely happy. Those were the king's happiest days, as Chima's emotions were tied to his. Soon, Chima's emotions resulted in an action the Dibia forbade the king to allow, Chima having a son. The day Chima's girlfriend announced her pregnancy to him, he froze. He knew it was unacceptable and a disgrace to the king, his father. The girlfriend wasn't of royal blood, and Chima felt he had let his father down. To hide his secret, he asked his girlfriend to leave her family and hide in another village until she had the baby. Her family, although angry at first with their daughter, were happy to have a grandchild from a royal family. They promised to keep their lips sealed. Chima promised to provide for the child once he was born. Chima continued to live his life with his secret safe. 9 months later, the child was born. News came through a secret message to Chima. He visited, named the child, blessed him, and doubled the security around him. The villagers were threatened to remain hush, or they would be wiped out completely. It was a small village dependent on the Kingdom of Nri. As soon as the baby was born, the king took ill. The traditional herbalists were consulted and medicine given. The king got better and inquired about Prince Chima's health. He was surprised to learn Prince Chima was hale and healthy. He wondered what might have happened to cause his ailment. 3 days after his recovery, he fell ill again. Once again, he inquired about Prince Chima, and the king was told he healthy and happy. He summoned the prince into his chamber and asked the palace guards to give them privacy. Once the giant doors shut before them, the king, although ill, summoned the strength to speak. "What have you been doing, my son?" he asked. "Nothing, father," he said, "aside from exploring the world around me and building relationships with the villagers." The king sighed. "Have you been well?" "Yes, father. I haven't been ill for a long time. I've been going for walks and basking in the sunshine." "Who did you meet during your walks?" the king asked. "Lots of hungry villagers and laborers by the roadside?" The king said, looking deeply into his son's eyes, searching his soul. "Have you been outside this village?" "No, father. I made sure I stayed protected just as you wanted me to." The king, not satisfied with the prince's answers, decided to summon the Dibia into the palace. The Dibia nodded with dissatisfaction when he stepped foot into the palace. He looked at the king, and shook his head in sorrow. "What do you see?" the king asked. The dibia bowed his head in sorrow. "My king, a big tree is about to fall, and a new one is ready to replace it." "Do not speak to me in riddles," the king roared in anger. "Your Highness, what was done cannot be undone. A child arrived into this world and has broken the longevity lifeline you connected to your son. I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen so soon, but I warned you." The king, angry with the dibia, asked the palace guards to throw him out of his palace and ensure he exits the village. This was to keep his secret from spreading throughout the village. He summoned his son, the prince, but he had eavesdropped on the conversation and fled the village in search for his son and mother of his child. The king alerted the villagers and the neighboring villages to find his son and put a bounty on his head. The king's illness worsened. After several months of treatments without results, the king passed on, barely 19 years into his reign. His youngest son took over the throne and became a fierce ruler unlike his father. Chima, the prince, escaped to a foreign land and lived as a commoner, concealing his identity and that of his son. He married the mother of his child, and they lived happily away from the responsibilities that came with being a king's son and heir to the throne. Sometimes he snuck into the village and visited his mother, who had grown old and frail. He never got to know the secret his father kept that led to his early demise. Thanks for listening to this short but interesting moral tale. I have a question for you. What is your takeaway from this story? Let me know in the comments section. Take care, and I will see you in my next story world.